Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Temito Kwefagbemi. We begin today in Sudan, where at least 24 children have died after drowning on their way to school when their boat sank in the northern region. More than 40 children, including a health worker, were on the boat, whose engine failed in strong current as it crossed a 2.5-kilometer flooded area near the River Nile. The school's headmaster says the children, who were between the ages of 7 and 16, began to panic, leaning to one side of the boat before it overturned. The pupils have been using a boat for the past week due to flooding after heavy rain. The area's residents are mostly from the Manasseh tribe, who have long raised concerns about the flooding of their land due to the construction of a controversial dam. In West Africa, Mali's Electoral Commission has declared President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta as a winner of the presidential runoff election. Official results show that he won Sunday's heavily disputed poll with 67.17% of the vote. Opposition candidate Soumaïla Cissé, who won 32.83% of the vote, says he will reject the result as he claims the vote was marred by fraud. This victory hands President Keïta a second term in the mostly desert West African country where militant violence and claims of fraud by the opposition marred the poll. However, the results have to be validated by the Constitutional Court. In Uganda, detained musician turned politician Robert Kyagulanyi will appear before a military court on Friday. Mr. Kyagulanyi, also known as Bobi Wine by his supporters, was expected to appear in a military court today in the northern town of Gulu. He was arrested alongside opposition politician Kassiano Wadri, who went on to beat the ruling party's candidate in a fiercely contested municipal by-election following an attack on President Yoweri Museveni's convoy on Monday. Local media reports say that the two have been charged with treason, with police seizing 2 submachine guns, a pistol, and 75 rounds of ammunition. However, it is unclear why the authorities plan to try Bobi Wine in a military rather than civilian court. He has been touted as a potential challenger to President Yoweri Museveni in the 2021 election. The opposition has long accused the government of hounding critics of the president. Let's get more on the story from a senior lecturer of international law at the Nasarawa State University, Mr. Chukwemeka Eze. He joins us live from our Abuja studios. Thanks for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you, Temitope.
So, what do you make of the treason charges leveled against Ugandan politicians Bobi Wine and Kassiano Wadri?
I think that the charges are meant to stultify opposition to Museveni's plan to be in power till 2031. We can see this from the background of how he has treated the leader of Forces for Democratic Change, that's retired Colonel Kizza Besigye. During the previous elections that Besigye stood toe-to-toe with Museveni, he was subjected to all manner of ill treatment. So he doesn't want to take chances because Bobi Wine has, in 4 recent elections, trounced his national resistance movement and the Forces for Democratic Change. So he sees him as a new political current that might sweep him away from power. So I think that's why Museveni is taking the steps that he's taking currently.
Now, we understand that both men will be tried in a military court rather than a civilian court. How legal is this, considering the fact that both men are not in the military?
I think he wants to treat them as enemy combatants, knowing that the usual, the enshrined fundamental human rights in their constitution will not be invoked when there is a court-martial. And I think that's an extreme measure that Museveni wants to apply. This is a reported case of stoning of the president's car, and he's trying to, charge them for treason. That's so funny. It shows how, to the extent our leaders can go in trying to stay in power. But I think what he's doing is not queer, because Uganda has a history of not tolerating opposition. From their independence, I think in 1962, no leader in Uganda has tolerated opposition, especially a former guerrilla leader, Yoweri Museveni, who has been in power since 1986. This is his 32nd year in power. And having removed the ceiling, used the parliament to remove the ceiling on constitutional term limit. Basically, he wants to contest the next election in 2021, and he will stay there till 2031. He's trying to do everything possible, even if it requires using the military court, to ensure that he removes his future opponents from the political sphere of Uganda.
Now, like you pointed out, the president has used the same method to silence Kizza Besigye. Now it's Bobi Wine and Kasanu Wadri. How can the opposition fight back against this tactic?
It will be difficult to fight back because he has used a political masterstroke. Recall that in December 2017, when he assured that the term limit was removed, he increased, or his party increased the term for parliamentarians from 5 to 7 years. So his parliamentarians have the majority in the 451 seat in the parliament. So it will be difficult for the opposition to sweep away his majority so soon. So and he uses the army and the police at the same time. So it doesn't allow even for full exercise of democratic power by the parliament. Sometimes he militarizes the whole parliamentary environment. Last time he prevented some parliamentarians from serving the speaker some court processes, Rebecca Kadeka. So basically he uses a combination of military, police, and all forms of power to ensure that the opposition does not rise in Uganda. But I think he will have his time for a while. It will not be permanent because the people of Uganda have a limit to which they can tolerate this level of nearing dictatorship. I think Uganda is nearing dictatorship.
So is there anything the African Union can do, and maybe regional countries, can they intervene in this matter?
They cannot, because if you look at Article 2, Paragraph 7 of the United Nations Charter, we have every state has its sovereignty. And it has not reached to that point that the African Union will begin to come in because these are internal squabbles. But basically, it borders on human rights. I think the Western countries can do something. But I think Museveni has been in their good books, but it's getting to a point that I don't think they will continue to allow this type of situation. African countries, who are the African countries? Is it Burundi? Is it Congo Democratic Republic? All these African leaders, they are not, many of them are practicing civil rule, they are not practicing democracy. So, I mean, dogs cannot eat dogs. I don't see African countries influencing anything in this direction. And Yoweri Museveni has been a darling of the Western democracies. But I think if he continues with this level of repression, it will get to a point that Western democracies will begin to look in that direction. So Africa is underdeveloping Africa through its leaders. This is no longer that time we say how Europe underdeveloped Africa. This is how Africa is underdeveloping Africa. And it is not yet to Uhuru. But Ugandans can rise. They can rise and take their destiny in their hands. Because Yoweri Museveni is going beyond even the provisions of the Ugandan constitution. You look at Articles 259 and 262 of the Ugandan constitution. Basically, he has bastardized relevant articles that gave the people political and democratic safeguards. So Western democracies and the United Nations can rise to the occasion this time around.
Senior Lecturer of International Law, Mr. Chukwuemeka Eze, thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you very much.